Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Jordan Tusher and State Senator Nate Bluen. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So you'll be in special session later this week on Wednesday. Let's first start with the emergency response element of that special session. You will be taking up extending the declaration and appropriating some funds for this. Representative, let's start with you. Do you see any backlash at all, or is this something that will be pretty smooth going through?
Yeah, I expect it to be a really non-controversial special session and one that ends pretty quickly. You know, we'll probably meet for an hour or two to get 3 bills passed, 2 of them dealing with this emergency response to the flooding. And I'll just say that I think generally we're so grateful for the moisture and water that we've had in the state. We had some foresight in putting up some funds, about $5 million towards this, and it's time that we come back and appropriate a little bit more money towards that, and give the governor some more time to be able to respond to the flooding situation.
Senator, you've seen some flooding in your district, and there have been some people that have suffered some damage from this, but if you take a look at this compared to, say, '84, there's a really big difference in how this is playing out. Talk about the response and the impact it's having.
Yeah, I think we were prepared this year. The governor had some foresight there, which was very lucky to establish those funds up front. There was some nearby flooding in my district. I've been out sandbagged in Salt Lake City and South Salt Lake a little bit. So I know those folks have really done a good job at preparing. And, you know, I think we're thankful for the moisture, and we're going to keep working to make sure that we have the best response in place. And so far, I think things have been going well. You know, I think we still have a lot of snow left up in the higher elevation. So it remains to be seen exactly what's going to happen in the coming months. But so far, so good. And, you know, it would have been a little bit of fun to kayak down State Street, but I'm glad we're not there.
Yeah, some people are doing that at Sugar House Park, but that is actually serving, the park is serving its purpose, and part of the reason why we have seen the result that we have so far. Okay, a third bill that you'll be taking up has to do with firearms. It's a bill that passed during the legislative session, just a technical fix. Essentially, it unintentionally left a certain group unable to purchase firearms, so you'll be taking that up. But there's a broader discussion here, Representative, I want to get into. We're coming off another mass shooting in the state of Texas. The Texas legislature is actually taking up a bill that would potentially raise the legal age limit from 18 to 21 for certain high-capacity magazines. Do legislatures across the country need to be taking a closer look when it comes to accessing guns?
Well, that's a great question, Glenn. I think generally this is something that everyone throughout the nation, and especially in the state of Utah, we're constantly looking at. How can we ensure that people are safe? How do we balance that protection of our Second Amendment rights with ensuring that we don't have this type of violence? And so I know this last session, we took a look at that in several bills. We passed some legislation dealing with school shooting safety, making sure that we had the right protections in place there. And we'll continue to see legislation. It is not an issue that's one and done. But a lot of the response needs to come on the federal level. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the debate today. And we'll continue to see what our federal delegation does to try to solve these problems.
Real quick, before we bring the senator back in, what are some solutions you could potentially support on a federal level?
Well, I think there's a wide gamut of different things. What I look at when we're looking at gun control legislation is, does the solution actually solve a problem? There's a lot of solutions that are proposed out there that really don't do anything to solve the underlying issues that we have. And though it's tragic, the type of school shootings or public shootings that we've seen, those that are done by handguns, those are done in high metro areas, et cetera, are where we have some real problems. And so I'd love to see more being done on mental health and what we can do to push the envelope there and try to help people before they even decide to purchase a firearm.
Senator, your thoughts on that? What should state legislatures be looking at when it comes to this issue?
Yeah, I think we need to be doing more. I think there's some really good tools in the toolbox that, again, there's not great data on some of these things, and that's a result of some issues at the federal level over the decades. But I think things like waiting periods that have been proposed here in Utah, things like raising the minimum age to purchase a firearm, like you just mentioned, I'd like to see those tried. You know, we have pushed the boundaries in some other constitutional areas here in Utah. I think we were the defendants for a couple of First Amendment lawsuits. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that we can't push the envelope on some of these Second Amendment solutions as well. I think that, you know, the Second Amendment's going to be there, and we're not going to take away everyone's guns or anything like that. But I think there are things that fall squarely within the boundaries of what was intended there that we can really address here in Utah and also at the federal level.
Representative, respond to that. What is the goal when you talk about protecting the Second Amendment and making sure that guns aren't taken away from those who are capable of having them and legally having them?
Yeah, well, it's an important right that we have as citizens of the United States. I mean, it was second in the Bill of Rights that the founders put in place. And I think what we see too often in areas where they have really heavy gun control legislation is it doesn't solve the problem at all. It just takes the weapons out of the hands of those that are trying to defend themselves and continues to leave them in the hands of those that are causing the problems.
Senator, address that issue. What is it about a law that someone who wants to go break the law anyway would keep them from having a gun in the first place?
Well, I don't know if I can speak to the data or anything. What I can say is I think we've seen in many of these recent mass shootings that the firearms have been purchased legally. And so I think putting up some barriers there in the legal process for some of these folks who have bought high capacity weapons and thousands of rounds of ammunition, I think there are ways to make it a little bit less accessible that would potentially put a dent into the violence.
Let's move on to another big story through the week, and that is the expiration of Title 42, a COVID era rule that was put into place regarding our borders. Now that it has expired, border officials are expecting a massive run on the border. First off, Representative, how are you assessing what you're seeing play out there?
Yeah, really good question. And we already have a crisis at the border. And so knowing that Title 42 is expired now is going to be even more detrimental to the problem that already exists and exacerbating what's there. I had the chance just a couple weeks ago to go down to the southern border and take a look for myself at what was going on. And we have some serious problems. And I think it's at real fault to the administration that we have now, for Congress for not acting. These are things that we knew were a problem, and no one wants to solve it. And so when we see something like 13,000, they're saying, migrants a day that are going to be crossing the border, that leads to almost 500,000 a month, over 5 million in a year. This is a problem that needs to be solved today. Senator,
what are your thoughts as you take a look at what's happening at the border?
Yeah, I think this transcends partisanship. I think we've seen Title 42 as a Trump policy. Biden extended it. I would have preferred to have seen it reversed years ago. Not long after Biden took office. I think the extension has just delayed the inevitable. And yeah, we're seeing folks line up at the border, and I think ending the process is going to create an initial surge, and that's problematic. And I wish there were better ways of dealing with it than sending armed military forces to the border. But I think in the long term, it is going to be the right thing, and what we need to do is create better legal pathways to immigration.
Let's talk about that a little more. What are the solutions moving forward? I think consensus would tell you it shouldn't be executive order, but it should be Congress coming together and making laws. So what are the solutions moving forward, Representative?
Well, I think it's two things. One is strong border security, and that includes a wall, it includes personnel, and it includes technology. All three of those are important. And we talked with the border security about these issues, and they say you can't just have a wall, you can't just have people, you can't just have technology, but all together we can create strong protection to protect our borders. But then, like Senator Bluen mentioned, we need to reform our legal immigration system. And in a lot of ways, we've sort of outsourced that to the cartel in regulating on the Mexican border who gets across and who doesn't get across. There's certainly a need for migrants in our country. Let's open up those opportunities. Let's make a legal pathway a reality so that they don't have to try to cross illegally.
Senator, we have about 30 seconds left. Those will be yours. More specifically, solutions you would like to see.
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to legal pathways. And, you know, I was a bit disappointed to see Senator Romney really pushing hard to finish the border wall. From what I've seen, that's not a viable long-term solution. As the wall was getting constructed in the Trump administration, we actually saw, I think, apprehensions and crossings go up along with the, we didn't see an increase in apprehensions at the border as the wall went up. People were still able to navigate around it. And so I think making sure that we have better viable legal pathways for refugees, for immigrants from the southern border, from other nationalities, you know, that's going to be increasing the administrative capacity as well. And so we've got to supplement all those agencies that are working in that area.
All right, we have been talking about this pretty much our entire lifetimes. It'll be interesting to see if Congress can work together on this. Appreciate your insights. Thanks so much for being here with us this morning.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.